For the moderator in the next session, we will have joining in virtually from South Africa, Ms. Sarah Cohen. She is the Executive Officer for SALDA, who is the Southern African Laboratory Diagnostics Association. Ms. Sarah is a passionate advocate for innovation in medical technology. She regularly speaks at conferences and events, sharing her insights on the future of IVDs and their impact on medical technology. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Great. The session is yours. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much, Katerina, and a very big thank you to the organizers for allowing SALDA to engage with you once again. This is our third year at this meeting, so thank you for allowing us to do that and to engage particularly around the aspects of IVDs. I'd like to now introduce the first speaker in the session, which is Innovating IVD Compliance for Medical Devices. Ms. Loshnee Vandayar. She's a Senior Manager, Regulatory Affairs, EEMEA for Cepheid. She has worked in regulatory affairs across Africa for more than 12 years. She has a BSc in Biochemistry and Microbiology from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, a National Diploma in Biomedical Technology from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, as well as a postgrad degree in Business Management. She's currently busy with her MBA in Healthcare Management and has extensive hands-on laboratory experience and has worked in medical device and IVD industry for over 15 years with numerous managerial positions. She has been with Cepheid since 2019 and currently holds the role of Senior Manager, International Regulatory Affairs for Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa. She's also the Vice Chair of SALDA, the Southern African Laboratory Diagnostics Association. Her title will be Streamlining Regulatory Approvals for Cutting-Edge Diagnostics. Loshnee, I welcome you to present. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Sarah, for that introduction. And thank you to the AfriSummit team for having me here again for the third year. It really is my honor to present. So when I was putting my presentation together, as you can see, it's on streamlining regulatory approvals for cutting-edge diagnostics, navigating new frontiers, a collaborative journey. I was thinking about how to make this presentation resonate with everyone in this room, so the regulatory professionals that are attending, as well as our NRAs. And when I was at dinner last night, I was having a conversation with one of my regulatory colleagues who presented yesterday, Mr. Christopher Odero, and he said something that resonated very deeply with me. He said, yes, we are all regulatory professionals and industry stakeholders, but we are also patients. So with that in mind, I said, let me personalize this to showcase exactly what we mean when we say that. So this is Loshnee, this is me, right? I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'll have a couple of options from A to D, and you can guess what the answer is. The first question is, how many chronic non-communicable diseases does Loshnee have? So by a show of hands, who thinks the answer is A? Okay, we have a couple of people. Who thinks the answer is B? A couple more. What about C? No takers? What about D? No takers. Okay, so there's some people who are not guessing here. The actual answer is D, 8. The next question, at what age was Loshnee's first diagnosis? Who thinks the answer is A, 5 years old? We have Katerina. Who thinks the answer is B, 9 years old? A lot more takers. Who thinks the answer is C, 16 years old? One taker at the back. And who thinks the answer is D, 24 years old? A couple of people. So for the record, I'm not going to state my actual age on this stage. But the answer is B, 9 years old. So, before we move on, I would say, the poster child for what I've just mentioned. I'm a regulatory professional, an industry stakeholder, but above all, I'm a patient for many years running. So what is happening in Africa? As Dr. Mona mentioned, right, and this is an IVD session, so the Africa IVD market is expected to close at about a USD of 1.68 billion by the end of this year. By 2029, we're looking at an African market volume of 1.99 billion for IVDs. And what are we currently seeing? A rising prevalence of chronic non-communicable diseases. The WHO themselves in 2023 stated that 22 million adults in Africa had diabetes, myself included. We're also seeing a rising geriatric population across the continent, as well as frequent endemic disease outbreaks such as Mpox, reduced infectious disease focus due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what new innovations in diagnostics are coming to attack these non-communicable diseases, these infectious diseases, and the reduced focus that we've seen on infectious disease due to the COVID-19 pandemic? This is just a very short list, and I won't be going through everything that's on the list, but just some of the ones we can expect to see rising in popularity in the next 3 to 5 years. So let's start with the hot topic, next generation sequencing. It provides a higher discovery power to detect novel genes and higher sensitivity to quantify rare variations and transcripts. Next-gen sequencing versus qPCR technologies also differ in their scalability, their throughput, making multiple targets and multiplex panels a close reality. The capacity of next-gen sequencing and of its massive parallel sequencing offers a lot of new opportunities for personalized precision medicine, for example, liquid biopsies. So the US FDA, let's talk a little bit about what they're doing when it comes to regulating next-gen sequencing products. Typically, they require that the developer must submit data and/or information demonstrating the clinical significance of any variant for which we wish to make clinical claims. But in many instances, next-gen tests are used precisely because they can routinely detect rare variants for which it is very impractical for test developers to provide any conclusive evidence supporting clinical significance. So what does that mean for not just the US FDA, but for every NRA? It means we require a lot more flexibility in our regulatory processes and a lot more of a collaborative approach. Next up, I want to mention a little bit about AI and machine learning. We know AI is booming right now. AI enhances the accuracy and efficiency of diagnostic tests. It can analyze vast data sets to identify patterns, predict disease outcomes, and assist in treatment decisions. AI can have many applications in image analysis, pattern recognition, and data interpretation. Another important diagnostic tool or innovation is CRISPR, CRISPR-based diagnostics. CRISPR being the clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. It can offer rapid and highly specific detection of genetic material, including viruses and bacteria. And it is especially valuable when it comes to infectious disease diagnosis. Another point is digital pathology. We are yet to see this boom largely in new innovations in diagnostics, but it is coming. It's scanning and analyzing of pathology slides using digital imaging technology. It allows for remote consultations, easier data sharing, and the application of AI algorithms together with digital pathology will really help to aid in diagnosis, and it can enhance the accuracy and speed of disease identification. The next point is laboratory-developed tests. This is a hot topic in South Africa, as well as in the US at the moment. Laboratory-developed tests are in vitro diagnostic products that are intended for clinical use and are designed, manufactured, and used within a single laboratory as per the US FDA. On May 6th, 2024, the US FDA issued a final rule aimed at helping to ensure the safety and effectiveness of locally developed laboratory-developed tests. The rule published by the US FDA amends their regulations to make it very explicit that in IVDs, they are classified as devices under the FD&C Act, including where the manufacturer of the IVD is a laboratory. So what does this mean for innovation? It's under discussion in the US at the moment, with a lot of the associations in country saying that this new rule will stifle innovation, especially when it comes to laboratory tests for rare diseases within the country. And we need to look at that within the continent as well, because we do have a lot of rare disease burden. So how can we streamline regulatory approvals? And again, I will mention the discussions we had last night at dinner, I think, were really eye-opening, really resonated with me when it comes to openness, transparency. The presentations we had both yesterday and today, where everyone discussed regulatory flexibility, specifically what we've seen come out of the EDA, and kudos to them for their agility and flexibility that they've built into their regulatory framework, as well as what Dr. Maha mentioned when it comes to establishing trust and credibility between industry and the NRAs. So the best way to streamline any kind of regulatory approval for innovative products that we haven't seen on the market before, or our NRAs haven't been exposed to yet, is to adopt a collaborative strategy. For example, a consultative process where we expand, enhance, and explore. Collaborative approach, perhaps tailored to our NRA and giving them a focused experience of what our new product is, what new innovations are coming out of industry, relationship building with NRAs, joining pilot programs, proactive information sharing, similar to what we see currently happening at the US FDA, where they have built out an initiative called collaborative communities. For example, there's an AI group called AfterRaps, which tackles some of the complex problems facing the healthcare system within the US at the moment, and looking at combining efforts from the trade associations, from public sector, from private sector to tackle these problems and look at a risk-based approach when it comes to new technologies. Because some of these new technologies, as Dirk mentioned in his presentation, we may not know at the outset what the risks are going to be. So even though we want to establish a risk-based approach, it has to be a collaborative and a consultative effort in order to establish this. So we want to expand the reach through a consultative approach. As I mentioned, we want to also give our NRAs a product experience, expose them to what's coming, so that they can learn and understand the new technologies, how our products work, and how our products perhaps differ from what they may have seen on the market previously. So I want to add a little bit about local manufacturing and innovation, because that's been discussed extensively yesterday. And what can NRAs do? So I want to use the example of South Africa, because we have a medical technology master plan that was recently published by the Department of Trade, Industry, and Competition that focuses heavily on local manufacturing, of supporting innovation in country. And I know Dr. Maha also mentioned the EDA investment initiatives that she is working on in country. I also want to highlight something that was very exciting that Kanisile mentioned, which was the MDATC and the upcoming pilot program for the continental list of approved devices, and something that everyone discussed yesterday, which was advancing global convergence without stifling innovation, as well as MOUs and best practice sharing. So what do we as industry want to see? So I say industry, but I am industry and I am a patient. So I want to see capacitation of the African continent. I want to see information sharing. I want to see SMEs joining together from industry together with the NRAs to make sure we know what's coming when it comes to innovative products that we want to bring to our populations. I want to see stimulation of innovative product development on this continent. I want to see commitment to support innovators and regulatory flexibility and agility built into the NRA regulatory frameworks so that we can ensure we can respond as countries to any new innovation that we potentially want to bring into our markets. And that's it from me. Just a few citations at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loshnee, for an insightful presentation. We're going to move forward now into a panel discussion. So I'd like to introduce the moderator for that session, Dr. Maha Zahran, who's the owner of Uniclue for Consultation Services. She's a pharmacist holding a master's degree in business administration with a focus on health economics from the Arab Academy for Science, Technology and Maritime Transport, with regulatory affairs experience for more than 9 years. She earned her regulatory affairs certificate in medical devices from the RAPS Online University since 2021, and she's also a lead auditor from BSI, having received her certification also in the same year. So welcome, Dr. Zahran, and over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah, for introducing me. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to have the privilege to be participating in the 4th edition of AfriSummit for the 2nd time in row. Our session today is about the IVD regulations updates, being not only bringing about the changes in the classification of devices, but also introducing transition periods to facilitate a smooth adjustment for manufacturers, healthcare professionals, and regulatory bodies. For our discussion today, I'm inviting our panelists on the stage. Dr. Heba Ahmed, the Manager of Administration of IVD Listing at EDA. Heba Ahmed is an accomplished regulatory affairs specialist with over a decade of experience in the medical device sector, currently serving as the Manager of Administration for In Vitro Diagnostic Listing at the EDA. She has made significant contributions to regulatory practices, particularly in the field of IVD medical devices, where her work focuses on IVD dossier review, assessment, and market authorization. Heba's journey in the healthcare field began with her Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Sciences from Cairo University in 2008, where she graduated with honors. She quickly established herself in regulatory affairs, starting her career in 2009 at the Central Administration of Pharmaceutical Affairs under the Egyptian Ministry of Health. Her work at EDA began in 2020, where she initially handled regulatory approvals for imported medical devices before transitioning to leadership position within the IVD sector. Her dedication and leadership qualities earned her the position of Manager of Imported IVD Listing Unit in 2021, and later in November 2022, she became the Manager of Administration of IVD Listing, overseeing all aspects of IVD market authorization in Egypt. Throughout her career, Heba has demonstrated a keen ability to manage teams, troubleshoot complex regulatory challenges, and introduce innovative concepts to improve processes. Welcome, Dr. Heba, on stage. Our second panelist is Dr. Karim Wahba. He is the head of regulatory affairs and trade compliance in Middle East and Africa at Merck Life Science. Dr. Karim is with over 13 years of experience within regulatory management in medical devices, FMCG, and life science industries. Karim is a seasoned expert in navigating complex regulatory landscapes and ensuring compliance with international regulations. His expertise lies in strategic regulatory planning, risk management, and building strong relationships with regulatory authorities. Welcome, Dr. Karim. We have also Ms. Loshnee and Ms. Sarah online. So we would like to start our session today with my first question is for Ms. Loshnee. As learned today from your presentation for regulatory approvals of cutting-edge diagnostics, so from the industry perspective, what are the key challenges for registration of innovative IVDs, including but not limited to the clinical requirements?
Thank you. I think, as I mentioned, there are a lot of new innovations coming, and some of these technologies, we don't know what they are yet. We don't know how they're going to play into IVDs. And sometimes the way these technologies play out, they may require novel pathways to registration. They may have some test reports, some analytical performance that fits into the current regulatory requirements, and some they may not, like I mentioned about the clinical requirements for next-gen sequencing. So that's why we have to build flexibility into the regulatory frameworks. And I think other than that, what really becomes a challenge and an obstacle when it comes to new innovations that want to come into market to assist with patient diagnosis is if we have very much a pharma-based regulation that has been applied to either IVDs or medical devices, that often acts as a barrier because the new innovations may not necessarily fit into those regulations. It's not a one-size-fits-all, especially when it comes to new technologies entering the market. And I think when it comes to clinical requirements, the one thing we need to really keep in mind is that IVDs and medical devices are very different. Definitely, you're not going to see a clinical trial, you're going to see a clinical evaluation. And the data that comes out of that evaluation may not be a one-size-fits-all according to what we currently may see in our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Loshnee, for this valuable information. My next question is for Ms. Sarah. As we can see more shifting towards the registration of IVDs in many countries, so kindly share with us your insights on the challenges and the opportunities for IVD registration in the light of roadmap to registration as issued by SAPRA, the South African National Regulatory Authority.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zahran. And I think I must thank Ms. Kanyasile Nkuku, who gave us a very informative presentation earlier today about the roadmap, the way SAPRA is looking at product registration and how industry has been engaged in this. So I think critical to look at what Loshnee said, we do want a risk-based approach from the industry. There was a feasibility expression of interest rolled out earlier this year. The due date for applications was the end of June. Some of our member companies in the industry have raised interest, and I think working very closely together with SAPRA. What does concern us slightly is that there has been a focus on Class C and D, IVDs and non-medical, non-IVD devices. And we do understand that there are priority diseases in the country that we need to focus on, like HIV and TB. But I think there are other infectious diseases that we need to be aware of. So we're very keenly looking at this process. We do understand that the regulator has accepted these applications. There are approximately 15 organizations that showed interest with 22 products, all Class C and D. There is now going to be a submission portal. I think some of the member companies have received some training on this, and then the dossiers will be looked at very critically in order to develop these guidelines. But I think a lot has been discussed yesterday and today around communication, and that is where we do feel that industry and the NRAs need to work very closely together to communicate around this and how the whole product registration process will work. In other countries, we've seen there's been quite extensive stakeholder engagement, and we do appreciate that SAPRA, as our regulator in South Africa, will be having some stakeholder workshops to discuss this as part of the roadmap. We look very keenly at the way the technical dossiers will be reviewed. We do understand that some conformity assessment bodies have been approached to assist with the review of these documents as well. What would be important for products that have come from abroad is that the originating approvals will be looked at very closely. At the moment, SAPRA acknowledges 6 jurisdictions as well as the WHO pre-qualification. So I think that's very important. We also need to be aware that recently the WHO have issued a revised document around the pre-qualification of IVDs, which is open for comment till the end of November. So I think industry will be looking at that very closely. We're not quite sure yet what the impact will be around product registration, but I think we need to be aware of that. I think what is also very important, and Loshnee mentioned that, is product registration around products produced on the continent or in South Africa. And what are we doing to encourage the local manufacturing? We are very grateful that SAPRA has started the ball rolling around a guideline for local manufacturing. At the moment, I think it's more for medicines and vaccines, and we're hopeful that there will be one for medical devices and IVDs that industry can give input to and recommendations. I think that's very important. The local, the MedTech Master Plan that has come in earlier this year and been signed off by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, I think is very vital to the medical device and IVD industry. And one of the 4 pillars is the regulatory approach. So I think that's important to look at for the future, as well as research, innovation and development, and how we can capacity build within the Southern African region. There's been a lot of discussion around digitalization. I think for the product registration process and roadmap, this will be critical for online submissions and portals to ease the process, both for transparency and as part of digital transformation. There have also been a lot of discussions yesterday around reliance and regulatory convergence and good regulatory practice. And I think we as industry support this. We continue to engage not only with our regulator in South Africa, but other NRAs, because I think we need harmonization and most of all the collaboration effort, which was mentioned, I think, to enhance this whole product registration process. So thank you, Dr. Zahran, for the opportunity.
Thank you for these valuable updates from South Africa. Moving to Egypt. Since 2021, EDA published the first version of IVD's registration guidelines. So, Dr. Heba, will there be updates on the current version of the guidelines? And if you can share with us more information about the updates?
Yes, there is a new updated version of our guidelines that will be published soon for public consultation. The current version, as you know, was issued in 2021 with the initiation of the implementation of IVD's regulation in Egypt. Many adaptations have been made to our regulatory framework to facilitate the importation and registration processes, while ensuring the safety, efficacy, and the availability of IVDs in the market. So the upcoming version of our guidelines will incorporate all these updates in the new version, such as we will update the requirement and the conditions for obtaining marketing authorization licenses and marketing approvals. There will be introduced to the new method of submission for the IVD's application, as long with some guidance on the bundling system for the IVD's application. There is a lot of updates on this version. There is a new adoption of regulations that weren't covered in the first regulation. We will adopt the Japanese and Great Britain regulation. This version will also provide more clarification on the technical aspects of the IVD's technical files. Lastly, and the most important question, frequent question.
About the grace period, yes.
This version will outline the updated timelines for obtaining marketing authorization licenses for IVDs based on their risk classification to prevent any shortage in the market for the IVDs.
This is very good and good initiative from EDA that we're always looking for their flexibility with us. My next question is for Dr. Karim. As there are increased number of IVDs being certified under IVDR, and many countries are now being regulated for IVDs, and many others are shifting towards being regulated. So based on your experience, could you please share with us your thoughts about the emerging opportunities for harmonization in the regulations between the NRAs, and how reliance can decrease the burden of regulatory work on both the regulatory authorities and the manufacturers?
Thank you, Dr. Maha. And I would like to express my pleasure to be part of this panel. And back to your question. So if we look at the past years, probably the regulation of IVDs was not on the top priority of many health authorities. At the best, maybe it was part of the medical device regulation. But now we see the change, and we see how important this is and how it's being taken into consideration. Yet still we see the extent of regulation from one country to another. So some might be highly regulated, might have less requirements, and so on. So this brings me to the topic of harmonization. Based on my experience, the countries that me and my team we support in Africa, Middle East, and some Eastern European countries, I just would like to highlight some of these points. So the first one would be the bundling criteria. As you might know, that the main requirements would be the manufacturing site, the risk classification, and the intended use. But we see that also some other authorities are limiting the number of products per submission, or even the number of technical files per submission. Of course, we understand that this is important because of resources and to make the process easier, but the thing is that for us to meet the need of commercial, to decide which items to bundle, and to meet also the compliance and requirements of the authorities, that requires a lot of time. So that's why we of course support that, but we're looking forward to have more harmonized between the countries, so that to prevent the tedious effort and time to make just the bundling for each and every submission in country.
Thank you, Dr. Karim, for sharing your thoughts. Moving back to EDA, Dr. Heba. With reference to the latest EU updates published on last July for extending the timeline of IVD CE certification under IVDR. So, for this regards, will EDA adopt these new updates within the registration and importation processes?
Yes, regarding the last European Regulation Amendment 2024-1846, we will fully comply with these updates, and we will make official announcement about this soon, inshallah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, our panelists, and I will open the floor for questions from the audience. Anyone have any question for our panelists? Yes, the mic, please.
So this is Mohammed Bahr. This is Mohammed Bahr from Biomilieu. I don't know, maybe it is not too relevant to registration or listing, but bundling approach is currently followed for registration, importation permits, however not followed for vigilance part. So is there any approach to be also followed in vigilance? Especially for some IVD, normally we have like 200 items. So if you are limiting the submissions to 6 files maximum per week, for example, so we can take like up to 1 year to submit all our files. Thanks.
You ask
Yes.
EDA, right?
Yes, exactly.
You ask the wrong department. I am the one that issues the bundling system for marketing authorization. So the visions, I think, they start to apply the bundling system for the applications. but the details, you can ask Dr. Lamia yesterday in the resource session. So for IVDs, for marketing authorization or for annual approval, we already introduced the submission of files as bundle to reduce the time and facilitate the processes. Regarding the vigilance, I think they start to introduce this vision also, but I don't know what is the procedure or the timeline for their submission.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Heba. Anyone from the audience may like to ask? Okay, Mike, please.
So thank you for the panelists. So I have one question for Dr. Karim. So do the manufacturer have like other challenges beside the bundling criteria during the transition for the IVDR? And would the reliance would be like helpful or supporting these kind of challenges to be addressed? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And actually, I had maybe just a couple of points to add to my points. So actually, the point of vigilance and variation, we know that these might still not have clear guidelines published. Maybe even for medical device, it's clearer, but we would like to see more in terms of IVDs, especially that the requirements might be different. And this is important for us as the industry, as the manufacturers, since we want to be compliant. So if we're unsure, if we don't have this clear and ready, so it might be a pain point for us. Also, I can add the site inspection that still have been many times discussed and still exists for some countries. So we also would like to see some reliance in that regard. I can also add the language requirements for labeling. This is maybe not that much existing in Africa, maybe to a very small extent, since English is accepted for IFUs and labeling if in the majority, but still I think French is mandatory in some countries. Also, I think this is very clear in Europe. Even with the implementation of IVDR, we still see that some European countries ask for the local language, although it should be all harmonized as IVDR. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karim. Anyone else from the audience would like to ask our panelists? Okay. Yes.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. We've seen a few Africa regulatory authorities requiring, especially for IVDs, in-country testing and validations. I'd like to hear some of the comments from the panelists in terms of their views and how this impacts the timeline to registration and market access.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm not sure, I can't see who asked the question. Oh, it's Khadija. Yes, I think definitely this affects the timeline to market, especially for market access specifically for diagnostics that are aimed at critical disease burdens on the continent. And I do know that a lot of our regulators, specifically where we have high disease burdens in specific countries in sub-Saharan Africa as well as within the East African bloc, we have high disease burdens there, and they would like to see in-country testing. I think what is happening now when it comes to new innovations to try to counteract that, because we haven't seen much movement in terms of the requirements in country, is looking at including those countries within the clinical evaluations that happen at the outset, partnering either with the NRAs or with the ministries of health in country to ensure that testing is done there ahead of time, so that we can, I wouldn't say bypass the in-country testing requirements, but meet those requirements at the outset to reduce the registration timelines. And a lot of what I think industry is asking for at this point as well is, like Dr. Karim mentioned, is reliance, right? If we have the testing within similar population groups, do we really need to retest in the country in terms of full-scale in-country testing or full-scale in-country clinical evaluations? What type of reliance are our NRAs willing to provide to negate that sort of testing? Are they looking at, for example, minimal review or random sampling, for example? Yeah, I think that's, I don't know if Sarah has anything to add.
Yes, Ms. Sarah, do you have?
Loshnee, thank you. I think you've covered it.
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we are hearing you. Do you have any comments on this topic?
Thank you. Thanks. I am in agreement with Loshnee, but I think we need to also remember about in-country testing, and we had that experience during COVID. We need to look at capacity building and resources, and what really came to the fore during COVID when we had to do in-country evaluations is the level of public and private partnerships. So I think we may need to consider that, but I do agree the best approach would be reliance to try and avoid that additional in-country testing if we can. But if we cannot, then we need to look at all hands on deck really, and public-private partnerships, and how we can use all our resources to do in-country testing, not to delay product registration of essential products for our priority diseases. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. Anyone from the panelists would like to add anything? Okay. So I
Sorry,
guess...
it's Simone
Yes.
again. Sorry, I have a question. Can you see me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
see you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's a bit of a stupid question, and I'm actually going to ask again as to why is there this need for additional testing when at the design stage, according to ISO 13485, clause 7.3, you go through all the verification and validations, which should be based on the market that you intend to sell into. So if that clinical evidence is available because they do sensitivity, repeatability, and reproducibility testing, can you please explain to me why we need to retest in a country? Because if you're going to tell me it's because of the population, I've just said that that population should be part of the clinical technical evidence as part of the submission document for approval to get in the beginning. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're directing it to the regulator, if I can answer. Well,
Anybody can answer. I just want to know why we bothered to go with verification and validation testing if we're now going to do the testing again at a laboratory. Because remember, the test that you're doing should be from an accredited laboratory anyway that's got 17025. So you've got all of these accreditations in place in the design phase. Thank you.
yes, correct. And I think I'll start by saying I agree with you. That was my first comment, that if we're including a specific population or a population maybe with a chronic disease that might affect the way the diagnostic test works, and we've addressed all the risks that the regulator potentially has, then that should be covered instead of in-country testing. When it comes to in-country testing that is required over and above that, that would be something I think the specific NRAs would have to answer.
But sorry, but then the manufacturer needs to go back and redo and update their clinical evidence, because remember, you've still got to then do an update to your risk assessment and your essential principles of safety and performance. So that should be the discipline within your clause 13485's clause 7.3.
I will talk from either side. Our regulatory framework not mandatory to retest any validation or risk management or any test that has been done. We adopt, once the company has adopted regulation and make the tests for the technical file, even I accepted that one that is submitted to the notified body, or the manufacturer has, in which format, on which data he have done these studies, I accept it. Once I reach that he makes the test and it is that right, and validate the testing results. No need for retesting in the regulation or in our framework in Egypt. for any certified or self-certified manufacturers.
Thank you again for our panelists for this fruitful session and valuable information.